Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of EDTalks. As I've mentioned before, I think I have the best job in the world. I get to hang out with the coolest people at the most fantastic organizations. I had this experience recently. I've got to tell you more about it, but rather than me telling you about it, I talked the two leaders of that experience into sharing with you. And so I want to introduce to you Dr. Doug Slakey and Dr. Daniel Salcedo. Welcome, Daniel and Doug.
Great to be here, Ed.
Thank you for having us, Ed.
Yeah, long introduction. Let me tell everyone about what we're going to talk about, and then I'll have you introduce yourselves and we'll go from there. So, Belmont University, I believe, right, it's the latest medical school, not only in the country, maybe in the world, right? It's brand new, it's like a year old. Belmont University, it's a beautiful campus in Nashville, Tennessee. I love Nashville. And it's a Thomas Frist Jr. College of Medicine. And so with that, Daniel, why don't you introduce yourself and your role, and I know it's beyond just the College of Medicine, and then we'll do the same with you, Doug, and then we'll jump right in. So
Great.
Daniel.
Thank you, Ed. So my name is Daniel. I'm an internist by training. So I studied internal medicine, but my path kind of took a little bit of a different direction. I practiced for a few years and discovered that what I really liked to do was teaching. So this kind of took me in a completely different career path in which I said, well, why not do what you really love? This ended up with me being in Japan for 15 years. I did a master's in health professions education at Massachusetts General Hospital Institute for Health Professions. And then after that, I just started working in the very exciting field of simulation, which has led to many different pathways. I've done a work with extended reality, virtual reality, consulting for developing simulation centers around the world. I spent some time working for the Japan Agency for International Cooperation. We built about 16 different centers around Southeast Asia, and we've also had very extensive collaborations with Europe. So it's been really exciting. But then suddenly I got the call back to come back home, right? And that's how I ended up working at a combined center between Case Western Reserve University and the Cleveland Clinic. And that's kind of where I really got into this all exciting area of how do we use technology to improve the way we're training people. After a few years there, I got a very exciting call one day asking me to come and check out this big center, 60,000 square foot center down in Nashville. And I was like, okay, well, let's go take a look at that. And yeah, as soon as I saw the center, I knew that this was the place for me. And here I am today. So very excited to be here. Thank you.
That's awesome. Yeah, we crossed paths a little bit there at the clinic. And then what about you, Doug? Tell us about
Yeah,
yourself.
so transplant surgeon by training, and some people call me a serial surgical chair. So I've been chair of surgery at a couple different institutions and built several programs, and decided, like a lot of people who wound up at the Thomas F. Frist Jr. College of Medicine, to sort of look at my career path and what I could accomplish and build upon what I had already done and aspirations. I'm the HCA Healthcare Endowed Chair for Health System Science, and I chair the Department of Health System Science, and also founded the now global Collaborative for Health System Innovation, which we're really excited about. And really, our aspirational vision is how can we optimize the ability of people to regain control over their long-term personal healthcare journey, and in doing so, also empower people on the front lines for physicians, nurses, and others in the provider space. So kind of a really exciting but incredibly timely look at how we rethink the personal healthcare journey.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And we'll talk about maybe the intersection of that in the sim lab. So Daniel, for those, and I wish I would have taken video and I could have like embedded some video in our talk right now. But Daniel, for those who might not have been to a simulation lab, can you sort of explain the 60,000 square foot, like what is a simulation lab and sort of the why behind it?
Great. Well, simulation centers are probably one of the most exciting educational spaces to ever be in. Basically, what we do is reconstruct clinical spaces realistically as possible. And we bring people in and we train them in these spaces with the hope that what they learn, they'll be able to take and immediately apply in a clinical setting. So the closer we are to reality, the more transfer of knowledge that's going to happen from those skills that they're developing into real world practice. And that's what simulation centers traditionally do. Now, I do have to say that the simulation here is a little bit different. One is we have an enormous facility, so 60,000 square foot. That puts us within the 10 largest simulation centers in the country and potentially in the world as well. And the interesting thing with all this is that we're able to do a lot of things that a regular simulation center cannot do. So we're not only focusing on how we're training people, but we're also looking at how do we engage with our community. Nashville is one of the most vibrant healthcare communities in the world. We've got the headquarters for HCA. We have a ton of startups. So how do we engage with all these people to really improve the quality of what we're doing and bring that kind of connection of real world experience into academia and, a nice handshake with industry to really kind of cement that foundation of what we want to accomplish. So we work together with local companies in Nashville, help them testing products in realistic clinical environments. We help them, like maybe if you're planning to set up a new system on how you're going to run a process inside your clinical institution, we can actually provide you a playground, a sandbox, where you can actually come and test all these things out and figure out all the kinks and problems before you actually run it in a real space. So we're all about really providing realistic environments with all the parts that you need, equipment or experts, and then really offering that place where people can come and try things out, test things, experiment, and really be able to walk away learning from experience, because that's what we do. We're all about training people on how to learn from things that they're doing. You do something, you reflect on it, then you create some new understandings from that process, that experience, and then you get to apply those new understandings all over again into a new situation. And then that's kind of more or less the cycle that we get to follow.
Yeah, it's really cool. I came through with some of my CXO colleagues from the area, and we peppered you with all sorts of questions. You would think you were in a regular clinical environment from a technology perspective, all the technologies were there. So they're actually simulating and practicing in an environment just as if they were graduated, if you will, and out in a hospital. That's very cool. And I love how you work with the local community and engage them. And they, like you said, you create not only an education opportunity for the students, but also other companies. So, Doug, how does this, in part of the medical school and innovation, things like that, health system innovation, how do you work together with the simulation center?
Yeah, well, it's really, as Daniel described, it's an amazing space. So from wearing my health system science hat, we sort of look at two major opportunities within the simulation space. So one is, how do we actually train not just the individuals like medical students, but the greater interprofessional healthcare team? How do we train them about the realities of the systems in which they'll be working? From communication to team training to interacting with technology to processes and protocols. So often in healthcare we implement things and then we see how it works and then rethink it. Sort of a plan, do, check, act, but this actually gives us the ability to think on a system level, how do we test those realities? So that's one, and as I said, we're really focused on interprofessional education, incorporating things like the context of health, socioeconomics, education, culture, spirituality. The second big bucket that we look at simulation is as we roll out new advanced technologies to help with this long-term healthcare journey. For example, right now we're in the midst of programming agentic AI agents to help curate that longitudinal journey. How can we test that in a simulation environment and see what's really the impact? Where are things living up to expectations, maybe exceeding them, or on the other hand, falling short of our expectations where we need to really do some additional thinking and tweaking? And so we have the physical space, and we're also incorporating the concept of digital twinning as an adjunct to the physical simulation space. So we have physical, virtual, and team simulation, all as part of this health system science construct.
Yeah, it's very cool. And Daniel, can you just share briefly about the mannequins themselves? Because I think that really tripped us up a little bit. because, we all grew up with the mannequins being sort of one dimensional, but tell us about the mannequins and just how advanced they are.
Absolutely. So this is kind of one of the things that got me into simulation is I have this thing, I love robots. And for me, like the idea of working with robots on a daily basis was definitely a very big attraction to this career. But basically, we work with complex robots that are able to simulate almost every single dimension of a human being. So just to give you an example, our robots are usually life-sized. They articulate, they move their body in a very similar way that a human would. They have respiratory sounds, so you can see their chest going up and down. You can palpate their abdomen. They can cry. They can bleed from their mouth. They can do all these different things. The exterior part is highly realistic, but the other part is the interior is realistic. So if you go down, they have a full airway. Right, and this airway leads to their artificial lungs, and they have genitalia. They have all kinds of different things that would kind of be part of what you're doing in a procedure. You can put IVs on them. You can shock them with electricity. Now, this is just the mechanical side of it. Now, where things start getting really, really exciting is when we start looking at the physiological software that runs these machines. So the software is actually able to emulate how a human body works. So let's say I take this mannequin, I give him a shot of epinephrine, right? And then suddenly the system is going to start reflecting that drug into their vital signs. So what we're going to see is their blood pressure starts shooting up. You'll see their heart rate starts accelerating. Right? We start seeing all these changes. Even their pupils will dilate or contract depending on what kind of medications we're providing. We can also program pathologies into it. So for example, you say, okay, what happens if, I don't know, my patient has COPD and now he has a pneumonia on top of that. So then we can actually program those parameters in so the mannequin will respond physiologically like somebody who actually has that condition. So it just really takes it all to a whole new level and gives that realism and understanding of how complex pathologies would come together into this one device. The best part of it all is something goes wrong, we just hit the reset button, we're ready to go again. So they don't get tired. They're always ready to go. So that's a really exciting part of the training.
Doug, you just completed, right, the first year of the medical school and the training. Tell us a little bit more about the school, what you're doing, and where this is all headed together, and what you expect this could be amazing graduating class in a couple of years, right?
Yeah, I think it will really be amazing. I think, part of the foundation of the medical school that is really at the core is this idea that we do have a higher calling to provide education and servant leadership and to really help to inspire the next generation to look optimistically at healthcare. How can they be part of the solution? We're plagued, as we all know, with burnout and frustration and early quitting. And part of what I think drew people like Daniel and myself to this particular school at this particular time was to rethink that and to think, how can we help the next generation understand that they're part of the solution? And so it's been really inspiring to have the students come in and they still have to learn the basics to pass the boards and become competent, but we layer on top of that the humanistic components of spirituality and culture and respect for person and place and time. And from the faculty to the staff, to the students, everybody has that as a high priority. So it's really fascinating. People are here not just to accomplish the task of getting through medical school, which is important, but they're here to actually be part of the process and to learn something that will, I think, really carry them through their professional career and help them as individuals, but then more importantly, help those who they take care of and work with.
Yeah, I love that. And one final question for both of you, like what's one thing, because this really made an impression on me as well, is oftentimes whatever generation we're born in, that becomes the limit of our technology and our innovative thinking for a lot of people. Clearly not with the two of you. You're leading this cutting edge technology advanced medical school, the simulation lab, and the things that you do as the chair for health system science. So what's one thing that you do that you could offer other people to not just maintain, but just to continue your growth when it comes to like all things tech? And because you're not stuck, and a lot of people get stuck. So what's one thing? Daniel, I'll start with you and then we'll end with Doug.
Oh, that's a great question, Ed. For me, personally, it's a commitment to learn something new every year. So every year I identify a new technology, a new area that I want to explore, and I take a deep dive into it. And of course, much to my wife's distress, that ends up happening on the weekends and evenings. But actually, I take deep dive into
Yeah.
things, and then once you understand something, it is you take that and you say, hey, how can I use this?
Yeah.
How can this make a difference? Like, for example, this year I'm all about drones, right? So we're navigating, like understanding how drones work and how the guidance system works. And then now the question is, okay, so now we understand drones. Like, how can drones transform what we do, right? And that's why right now we're working on, hey, can we use drones to improve triage? Can we maybe we do geotagging of victims that we can be transmitting to a team of rescuers? Can we do that inside the simulation center? And the answer is yes. We grab a bunch of mannequins and actors and put them in a room and get the drone to fly around and try to tag them and identify them. So it's all about like really taking deep dives, taking
Yeah.
risks, remaining playful and thinking about, hey, let's have some fun with this and just experimenting. I mean, there's so much you can learn from just trying stuff out. And, if you make a mistake, well, you made a mistake, right? But it's being adventurous enough to say, hey, let's just do it. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, I love it. I think you gave us about five in your one answer of the deep dive. You gave us like five other hints. So that's really
Yeah.
good. Doug, what about for you?
Yeah. Well, for me, what motivates me in my current role and what we're doing is thinking about all of my experience and the people I've related to, and how can we actually use advances in technology to truly empower people on the front lines of healthcare? How can we improve actionable information, the alignment of resources, and the ability to do your task as a professional? And that relates both on the professional side, but then also on the patient side. And I like to actually use the term person, because healthcare is not just when you're defined as a patient, but as a longitudinal journey. And so how do we use new technologies to empower both sides of that equation? And so that drives me to looking at all sorts of new things that are exciting and happening with a very optimistic view. I think realistic, but optimistic,
Yeah.
that we can actually accomplish those goals.
Daniel and Doug, you're both amazing leaders, very inspirational people. So thank you for being my guests on EdTalks.